Welcome, friends, family, Starfleet officers.
Romulans, lend me yours.
Lend me your pointy
Where was that
ears.
going? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I am. Wait. I'm supposed to say something very specific here. Welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Well, why don't you murder it? Okay. That is, as you know, though, our audience knows that's what one famous starship captain once said. And another famous starship captain, about to get his own show, also said, wherever our mission takes us, we will try to have a little fun along the way.
Larry, you've been saying that for a while. When is this show coming out? I want to see this show. Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor, by the way.
And two of us sometimes put together a real live stream on Saturday mornings. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 66 of Life Support Live. This week, we are going to be talking about stuck in the past, not in terms of time travel, but when you are mentally stuck in the past. Larry.
You're physically stuck in the past.
Yeah. Well, we'll get there. Larry, it's been a busy 2 weeks since we last aired. Last week, you were at Las Vegas for the official Star Trek convention, and probably the first biggest Star Trek convention that's happened since COVID-19.
Since 2019, yeah.
Yeah. So, are you feeling okay? How'd it go, and what was it like? Oh, no, we're losing him, folks. We're losing him. We're losing him to the...
It was fine.
The post-con...
Well, this is what I said on Tuesday's Live was, I said it felt like, and you would appreciate this, it felt like a social experiment and also a time vortex anomaly, because...
Were you stuck in the past?
Well, yes, actually, there were times when it felt that way. It felt like it was about 2008 or 10 because between all of our four, a lot of them are with us today. A lot of the four, well, almost all, I don't know who got through. The foreign fans weren't there, and that was maybe 20% of the whole turnout. And overall, I had been thinking it was going to be about half normal size, and I think it was. I think I was pretty spot on, but which made it feel to a lot of people, to me anyway, like it was about 10, 12 years ago.
Wow.
I mean, the intensity was more intimate because there weren't as many mobs of people. And it was probably about a fourth to a third of the guests, including a lot of the headliners. All the Next Generation crew wound up not coming, or none of the Next Generation cast didn't come. And Discovery had to cancel early on because they were running late on production.
Right.
But a lot of individual people and a lot of people curtailed. They would do their panels, but they wouldn't do table signings. Yeah. They might do one big mass signing. So there was just an awful lot that made it felt numbers wise like it was a throwback. And to a lot of people that had never been around Vegas in those days, it was that way too. But at the same time, I say it felt like a social experiment because more than one person talked about this, vendors and guests and fans too. It felt like it went by in a blur, like a warp 10 blur.
Oh, you don't want to go warp 10.
But we were all in slow motion at the same time.
So you all became salamanders.
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
Salamanders, we were safely masked. But that's what it was a little off kilter, but still zoomed by it went by even faster than normal, even as we all felt a little off kilter slow motion. It was strange. It was fun, but strange.
Fun but strange. I was following it
because people did. My bottom line there was 99. There was mass compliance up and down the road. People got a little sloppy with it at times, but for the most part, nobody questioned the need. And people so you had here. I've still got it. I think I'm going to keep it forever. So I had my regular exhibitor guest ribbon.
Yeah.
But if you showed your proof of vaccination, you got. You're supposed to get an orange. Some people got a yellow. But it became the thing after a day or two. You'd be talking. You'd walk up to somebody you either didn't know them at all, or you knew them, but you hadn't seen them yet. And it was like a very subtle thing to kind of look down at their wrist and see what color they had.
Shouldn't it have been blue for Starfleet Medical and not yellow or orange for engineering or command, depending on the era you're in?
Spoken like someone who did not go through the warp tunnel that was Trek Vegas 2021. No, it was very loosey. Everybody knew what the color for vaccinated was, and the yellow was
Yeah.
in true Star Trek tradition. Somebody grabbed the yellows by mistake at one point, so then they went, okay, if it's yellow or orange. I think it was a blue and a green, but you had to be, in all seriousness, you had to be vaccinated. You had to show proof of a test if you weren't vaccinated.
Yeah.
And they had on-site testing right there at the line, and people had to go over and wait. They had the quickie one, and you had to sit and wait for the minutes that you needed to do before it would come back. But at any given time, there would be 6 or 8 people sitting on the benches as you went down toward that end of the pavilion. And anyway, I would say kudos on creation and everybody involved, and the fans themselves for policing it. And I think I heard where one person tested positive, and they were masked and vaccinated, and they immediately left.
Well, I was watching from afar, and
Or what?
the con, and just on social media, and
It's a far, far better place you watch from than you have ever. Message Doc? Okay.
Oh, Larry, I am a little loopy. Chris Tucker says, "What a cool conversation to enjoy with coffee on a peaceful Saturday morning." Chris, I am jealous because my coffee grinder stopped working this morning, Larry.
Oh no, it didn't survive the move. Is that what happened?
No, it's been working fine. And you know what I've been doing is people in lieu of like a housewarming plant, I've been asking for housewarming coffee beans. I have so many amazing coffee beans right now.
You traded the cow for some amazing coffee beans.
Yes,
No.
yes, I did. And
Oh, Jack.
and I grind it all, I brew it all, I do it all myself. But my grinder stopped working this morning. So I have a Rigelian matcha tea right now, which is, I mean, it's fine, but it's not what I'm looking for. So that'll explain some of these delays.
It's the Hernandez brew. Okay.
Yes, it is.
The matcha Hernandez brew.
I had a point to say.
Well, I'll say real quick
or a
that
point to make.
This is the life support live glass that
That's
I'll
a
talk.
beautiful. I'm loving those colors.
It's not a T Public thing, so I'll have to tell everybody about it later.
Ooh. So I was watching from social media, and a couple things. Number one.
This is curious. I'm curious how it looked on social. Yeah.
Well, it looked really cool. My favorite cosplay was the person who was cosplaying as the end credits to the original series. Did you see that? Yeah.
Production thing. Yes. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was.
I stopped dead in my tracks for about 5 or 6 people.
Oh yeah.
But it was a very blurry 5 days for me too, though, because I lost Saturday because for the first time I think ever in life as a fan or as a guest, I had enough of an upset that I lost. I had to lay down for about 8 hours, and I was worried that it was going to get worse, but it didn't. It just hung on. I had some kind of a stomach thing after I'd gotten up early to be on the morning show with John and our friend John and Jessica, and then I went and laid down, and I thought, let this pass in a couple of hours, and I wound up missing the day and got up about dinner time and got out and felt better.
Good. I'm glad you got to. You need a little bit of.
Yeah, I missed out on a lot of networking and a lot of fan seeing, but I still did see a lot of great cosplay. So
speaking of watching from afar, I like that cosplay, and it really seemed like the fan community felt like it was run safely. That really stuck out in a lot of the comments, that people were being respectful, that people were really following the rules. And it was awesome to see the lifers in person who were connecting. Some of them are here today, and we're able to kind of connect with you in person.
I'm sure they're sounding. Yeah, it's a lot of lifers I'd known already, and a lot of lifers I've met through life, through LSL. So no, it was awesome, and it was awesome to see people popping up with life support swag and the other things that I do. It was for the first time, we've had the store and people could actually have shirts and things, and it was just cool. and tote bags, And it was like, oh, it's because it's like shirts. The thing after shirts that is con great are the tote bags. It was like, oh,
Yes.
and I saw 3 or 4 people with those.
Yes.
So
And for the record, Zahir
and some
asks,
folks that don't even get in the chat, and they're lurkers later, and they were there.
Zahir says, you need a hand grinder. What do you do when you travel? When I travel, I go to a coffee shop. But when, Zahir, that's what I bought this morning. Out of my first, I spent an hour I opened it up, Larry. And you see, I'm in Starfleet Blue, right? I'm Starfleet Medical.
Yes.
I'm not engineering. But I opened up my grinder and I kind of like poked around at the wires. I'm like, it looks fine. I don't know. If I can't talk to it, Larry, I can't fix it.
Okay.
All right. So we got.
Well, I was going to say you have to get a grinder. I finally had to buy a new refrigerator. So,
Oh, that's a more bigger
I almost thought it
buy.
was going to have to happen before Vegas and without me here and Janet here alone. But fortunately, it's the other way around now. So
You
we
don't, you don't have a replicator?
no,
Well,
no.
I recommend
Replicator. So that's just, I
if
can't.
you're in the market, get the L Cars 1700 series. It's I've had one for 5 years going now. It's great. It still has a problem with salmon. It doesn't replicate salmon well, but
Oh, and
everything
that just
else.
ruins your first contact day.
Yeah, yeah, hey, woohoo! And we got a show, folks.
That's not where you went with that. Okay.
No, no, but I like where you went. So Larry, speaking of,
Stay away from the 1747 model. That's the lemon.
oh
Okay.
yeah, you don't want that one.
And you don't want lemon with your salmon. Yeah.
No. Speaking of big weeks, we'll get to lower decks in a moment. Speaking of salmon,
Oh,
but
that. Mhm.
also want to point out we just had, and you just did an episode on this. It was what would have been Gene Roddenberry's
Yeah.
100th birthday just yesterday, right?
It was so cruel. It's always cruel every year to come out of Trek Vegas and then have it be Gene Roddenberry's birthday at the same time when you're trying to remember all this. But no, it was a huge one. COVID made a big dent in what Trevor and Rod had wanted to do. They were trying to plan 2 years ago, and then almost immediately, 6 months in, there was going to be a press event Thursday on the actual day, a big kind of LA come in and do thing, and they had to cancel that and keep it small. But fortunately, the Vegas platform allowed, and I'm mad because I swear I shot a nice video of this and I didn't get home with it somehow. But there was the main corridor in the con facilities, the promenade there, where they usually have photo ops and things along the way and some kind of a museum display. Well, this year it was all a panel with big Gene Roddenberry quotes, the quotes that the celebrities have been doing in that series, which turned into the big visibility ongoing celebration, on social. All kinds of people. If they're not cast members or creatives, they're celebrities who are also Trek fans. So
Yeah,
you have a lot of
a
that.
lot of folks are posting. Yeah.
A lot of that. So the Rosario Dawsons and that kind of thing. But that was a big piece, and then 2 or 3 big announcements for projects. Anyway, it did get celebrated to some extent, and then NASA had a live panel on Thursday that's still up. Anyway, I did a blog post and tried to point to a lot of these things, but
Yeah,
yeah, the
yeah.
Trek Files, the Roddenberry sci-fi. Anyway, there were a lot of little celebrating in place. It wasn't as big as we would have liked, but I think the
All
message got out.
all
Yeah.
culminating in this moment right here, and this episode of Life Support
I
Live.
was like, ooh, what do you got? Oh, us. Oh, yes.
Yeah. Um,
Special 100th episode of Life Support Live, not. But
a couple of questions I want to.
sort of this would be if you were stuck in the past, and we don't want to go
That's
there.
right. That's right. A couple of questions came up for you, Larry, that I want to get to. So Glinda asked, any sadness I felt at not going was diminished by the joy of seeing people I love getting to get together. So I'm just kind of curious. This is more a question for me, taking off what Glinda said. Like, given all the limitations and the health and all of that kind of stuff related to the pandemic, did you have fun at the con? Like, even despite all the changes and all of
Yeah.
that?
Well, Scott went with me for the first time as an assistant,
Yeah.
and not like 24/7, but half time. I was trying to do a lot more and kind of assume a little more, and then I lost a day, and then the world was what it was at the same time, and there were a lot of things I didn't get to. I didn't get to go out and nearly see as many of the other guests, the actors and things, and network and just say hi to people. But at the same time, I saw a lot of new faces. A lot of people came up with. I felt a lot of people came up with stories.
Hmm.
A lot of our lifers for the first time. Anybody was wearing swag or carrying swag or something. It was like time for another little story. Um, I and so I connected with some people in ways ever, and then there were not survivors, but everybody like getting by, and at the end of it, feeling like our friends at Fansets, Lou and John. I talked to them a lot right at the end of the con when I finally got over to talk to them, and they were talking about how they did great sales. The Fansets pins people,
Oh
and
yeah, which
they
is
almost
what
did
I'm wearing
at the
right now.
last minute. They were thinking about maybe not coming, but they did, and they were glad that they did. And they had to, the people who were there, the fans had more time with guests. A lot of the signing guests said they did as much income as they ever did. The vendors, a
Wow.
lot of said they sold as much as ever,
Yeah.
and it was like people were. It was a little bit of a throwback, like I said, in a lot of ways. And one of it was people felt like they had more quality time when they did
Yeah.
have who they were with, and
Yeah.
things were a little more intimate. And we had the Roddenberry stage, which was the third stage originally, and then CBS took it over and did a lot of the same kind of programming, but the atmosphere was shifted around a little bit and felt more like a staging area. And a lot of people really loved that. I had a good time there with two or three things I did.
Yeah.
And that there was a little more intimacy, as crazy as that sounds, and we were all behind masks. It did feel a little more intimate. So it was a real mix. So no, I did have fun. I was very frustrated. The printing shop in the hotel was not open, hadn't been open for a year, so we were
Oh
all having to drive.
man.
And the schedule wasn't done until Monday night at 10 because
Because of
there
all
were
the
so many
changes.
people
Yeah.
dropping and so many
Yeah.
changes.
Yeah.
So there were frustrations, but at the same time, a lot, challenges. But
Yeah.
then I think everybody feels like we got through this, we could do it. And there was still uneasiness. Like I said, if people you see somebody you hadn't seen yet, and you kind of look down at their wrist because it got a little sloppy at the masquerade bar. And
I mean, that's kind of what happens at the end of Contagion. If anyone hasn't seen that movie,
yeah,
that's it's basically the
the
ending
movie,
there.
not the next gen episode. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad to hear it. And your experience sounds a lot like the last time I was at the Las Vegas convention, which was like 2006. Um, it was
That was a long
it was a
time
long
ago.
time ago,
The
and
experience
this is
was over,
before
but they,
like the cosplay, like before Comic Cons became what they are. But
this,
I had such a lovely experience being able to just like talk to anyone, and all the rooms you could easily get a chair in
mhm.
front. I remember I had just read Will Wheaton's. I forget if it's his first book or second book, but I remember just going up to his table and being like, "Hey, I'm studying psychology. I really appreciate everything you've written about depression." And he's like, "Oh, that's great." And then we started talking about sci-fi, and he's like, "Yeah, I've really gotten into this small show no one's ever heard about called Firefly." And I'm like, "Oh, I haven't heard of it. That sounds cool." Um, Anyways, it was a fun experience. And then J.R. Pohl says, I had fun. It was like Star Trek summer camp, wake, trek, eat, drink, rinse and repeat. And J.R. Pohl also says, glad you
I
feel
got to meet
better.
JR.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
came to your table a few times looking for you for a selfie on Saturday. But it sounds like you both got to connect, which is really lovely. I also want to say thank
You,
you to Jared.
yes, I was going to say it ran through real fast.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Jared hosted a little Zoom get together for folks for last Saturday since we couldn't do our show. And Jared had the biggest turnout that he's had for a Zoomy thing.
Hmm.
So thank you, Jared, for running that. So it's been So we've had a lot going on. The other thing, getting into our show.
Oh, Star
That's
Trek. Yes. Okay. Well, just Star Trek. Yeah.
getting into our
Ouch.
view on things. We also had new Star Trek for the first time in a while.
37 weeks. No,
In 37, I mean, can you remember those late 2000s with like, and just no Star Trek at all. Nothing. That was yeah. Now it's like, oh, it's been 37 weeks. Where's my new Star Trek? I need my like 50 weeks of uninterrupted Trek.
Where's all these 6 damn new shows I keep hearing
I
about?
know.
Where the hell are they?
Do them live. So we have new lower decks. So what we've been doing since we get new Star Trek episodes is we take that week's new episode as inspiration for our topic. However, we don't spoil that week's episode if you haven't seen it, especially for lower decks. I don't know what the global airing
It's
rights are.
better. I was gonna
It's better than last
say
time.
that the first season we were tiptoeing around this a little bit. Good to say though that they're on the same. Most everybody I think is on the same page, and they'll confirm this. Is on the same page. They're getting it a day later now, so we're not quite
Awesome.
as tippy-toey about that. So we can be a little freer, I think.
Awesome. Awesome. That's really good to hear. So we know there's been 2 episodes of Lower Decks now. This theme is sort of coming from the first episode of season 2, being stuck in the past, and kind of ruminating and thinking about things over and over again from the past. Larry, before we get to the that topic, just would love your impressions of the start of season 2 of Lower Decks.
Okay, here's my impression of Dr. Miglamo. No, Data and his feelings.
It's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I'm totally done with the
You
top of my
want my
head.
impression of Boimer on the Titan?
Yeah,
Ah!
it's like
Ah!
everybody else
Ah!
is tight and cool, and Boimler was like, ah!
Yeah.
I wanted Boimler to turn around and go, it's the Titan. But anyway,
I could do Riker too. Give me warp in a factor of 1, 2, 3, 4.
five,
Or no,
six,
no, 5, 6, 7. Oh god, I totally butchered it. Larry,
don't
it's the
drink.
Rigelian tea.
Nobody used to drink on that one. That's not considered an impression at all.
That
No, no.
was not that great. But yeah. What do you think? What do you think of our season 2 of
I
our
it's not-
animated series?
Well, if we're gonna talk about both shows, even though this is the theme, they've just picked right up where they were, which
Yeah.
is considered because they really kind of wrote them. There wasn't like a big break and they took off and then came back. They basically got the first batch done and then plowed right ahead because they had to, because for timing, and took if there was a break at all, it was really kind of after the second season. But no, it feels like they jumped right in where they were. There was a little bit of like exposition-y thing, like in case you hadn't been watching before, like who's that? Who didn't? It's only 10 half hours, guys. Don't watch this one until you put in a whole 5 hours watching the first season. But her explaining, jumping in with Romulans and Cardassians and Romulan ship. There was like a little ship freeze frame. If Lower Decks is every freeze frame pause button's dream
Oh my
contact,
gosh, there's so much.
then episode 2 we were laughing. I was laughing about this. It's like on steroids. You've got a collector in the mold of
Yeah.
Vespacho dying, and then another one, and you're in his room,
Yeah.
and it's people. My friend Aaron I saw finally just started doing a list of everything, and people finding things that you didn't know and things you recognize and you wonder why that's in there, even if you don't realize right off. But it was hysterical. But I can see them trying to do things with the characters, like Tendi and Rutherford got a little. Always felt like they were subservient to Mariner and Boimler, and that's probably the pecking order. They're the 4 regulars, but there's clearly a 2 and 2, and they've even made plot point jokes about meta moments about that.
Right.
And maybe we can get to one of those. Maybe next week's theme can be about that. But anyway, yeah, no, I think I don't know who's disappointed. It's like, oh wow, they're having sequelitis, the second season drop off. It's just I have not heard a single person.
No. I think if if you gave Lower Deck season 1 a chance to after the few episodes, if you saw it through to the end, this is the natural continuation of that story. Which is, in some ways, feels more like Deep Space Nine, where the story just kind of like, as things got arced, the story just kind of just flowed straight in.
Ebbs and flows.
It ebbs and flows. I really liked episode 2 just a bit better than episode one because I really love the standalone, um, like here's this mission. It's kind of wrapped up in a week. The first episode felt like a bit more of a part two to last year's
An
finale.
unofficial part two, first seasons.
Yeah, the first season part. When did first season one end, Larry? I don't even know what. Where are we?
Sometime in the pandemic, I don't
Yeah,
know. Wait, we're still in the pandemic.
was it
Oh,
last
okay.
fall? It ended a year ago. I don't know. I,
Yes,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
know where we
Before
are.
that, it started in October, I think, wasn't it? September,
Yeah,
October.
yeah,
We just had the year anniversary flyby, I think. So
right.
yeah.
Wait, it's not September yet.
Okay.
It's another
Wait, it's
year.
not. It's
No,
not.
it's August.
Oh, okay. Wait,
Gosh.
I missed Gene Roddenberry's birthday. Wait, I'm in Vegas. Wait.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Anyways, so if
No,
you like Lower Decks, um, you're gonna like season two. Um,
it's
and I love Jared's comment here. Ali, his impression butchered. Yes. Larry, his time unknown.
it's time wasted. Okay.
It's time wasted. What? See, the problem with that doesn't work because that would be almost every week of life support live at some point.
Oh, how lineal, you mortals. Okay. It's not the way of the prophets. Okay.
Oh, or the boy queen.
Yeah.
All right, so Larry, you know what? With a new record,
Ooh.
at 50 past the hour,
Oh,
I
yikes.
think it's
Okay.
time. I think it's time to open up that
15
briefing
20
room.
that went into to the black hole of yes, prep.
Okay, this week's theme is really inspired by week one of Lower Decks, and specifically, we see Lower Decks really begins with this moment where um, we see. I don't want to spoil it, but
Mariner. Beckett Mariner is her name.
no,
Yes.
I know. I'm trying to how do I frame it without spoiling the joke? Mariner is thinking about events from season one.
She's hung up on
She's
things.
hung up on things and thinking about them over and over. And, a few other characters are kind of doing the same. This kind of got us thinking that this is a great theme for us to explore. This idea of being stuck, thinking about something over and over again. We often call this ruminating. Oh, Larry, I forgot to turn on my cool color light. There we go. Get a little bit of.
Oh, okay. Phew. I was like, who is this boring Ollie?
This is gonna fix everything. I've got a little blue Life
Yeah.
Support Live blue hue on, but not hue. R.I.P. Um, the idea of ruminating about thinking about things from your past over and over
Stuck
again and
and
being
getting stuck
stuck,
in a yeah.
churning them around, trying to figure out. This is something that I think a lot of us have been experiencing in the pandemic. It's
Mhm.
something that often comes along with depression, and it often happens after difficult traumatic things as well. So I was kind of surprised we haven't really ever tackled this
Well,
as a topic.
it's what gets me going because I thought, some of the topics we started to bring up, some of the mission briefing that we started to look at from Trek episode examples. I thought, wait, we've done this before, and we've talked about depression and even like that spectrum of disruption. And it seems to me that, ruminating, being stuck in the past is the first. It's about, to me, duration and severity. And I think it's a very human thing to be, if something traumatic or something disruptive happens, to not, you don't blowing things off and going on as if it didn't happen and or stuffing it or whatever is not healthy either.
No.
So there's a certain degree of dealing with an issue to
Yeah.
process it
Yes.
that's totally healthy. And maybe it's a big one and it takes you a while, maybe even a week or two or three, and then you're really into problems when when it doesn't go away, and then it begins to alter your life, and that's where we're into the depression and anxiety and
Yeah.
all those outcomes. But just to talk about it as a root moment, ruminating can be something that's totally normal as long as it doesn't. I mean, I'm on the right track here?
Yeah, it's a normal process to deal with really difficult things that can go awry in
Right.
people.
Well, you're
And
trying. It's about processing. You're trying to deal with
yeah,
how
and
not to do it again, or what happened, what was the cause, or
the problem really is when people get stuck in that
yeah,
process, which is what I'll talk about when we get to our counselor's log. But yeah, it is a normal process that that for some people they get stuck in, and there's some wonderful examples in Star Trek that will hopefully help people kind of with some of the stuff that you might be going through right now. I mean, that's always our goal with Life Support Live is to take Star Trek to help us to kind of
gold.
deal.
Oh, okay,
We have some. I had to look up in our books here, Larry, the Life Support Live library here. But
okay.
yeah,
The life support the life support live companion.
yes, the season one companion, the official. We should write that. We should go through every episode.
Who better to write it than us? I
I
don't know.
know.
Do we license that out? What do we do? Okay.
We'll have we can have an introduction by Jared and Scott for the companion. But Larry, we've got a lot of episodes of Star Trek actually that are covering the entire franchise here. So where would you like to get started here on
Here, I was just thinking. Sorry, I'm just thinking for the companion, we have the like official early
Oh,
sketch of
wow.
head logo.
Did you make that? That's not me.
I did that to show you what I meant. I showed you this when we were talking about it, didn't I?
Probably. That looks cool.
Oh, you know what? Maybe this was me working with Scott. Okay, maybe you
I
haven't
don't.
seen that. No, this was like when I was saying I would use the cartoon heads. So anyway, here's your artwork, kids, for the
It
life
looks. It
support
looks
live.
like it belongs in a companion.
Yeah, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, that looks cool.
Take that, Rick and Mike. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Scott says you made that for me, Larry. A mock-up for the shirts. Nice,
yeah,
very nice.
yeah.
Um,
I remembered. Anyway, I
so
didn't ruminate too much. Well, see, just saying
yes,
ruminating, and stuck in the past. Ruminating to me sounds more healthily temporary. Stuck in the past sounds like permanently stuck in the past. But you can be stuck in the. I mean, stuck
yeah.
is a duration. Okay.
Ruminating kind of does take things to the nth degree in terms of severity. So, like thinking about things over and over can be fine. Usually, that term ruminating implies that it's causing you suffering, it's causing you pain. You really don't feel in control. It's this like constant churning that feels very difficult to turn off. But there's a spectrum here. Of how common to less common. So Larry, there's a lot of episodes to dive into. I think this might be a good
Maybe
place
we
for
should
us
get
to
started
start.
then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Should we talk about Turnabout Intruder?
No, let's not.
All right,
No. I'm,
moving page two.
the way you said that. No, that's what Turnabout Intruder is like. Not the highest quality episode. It's not really a finale the way we think of finales. It's hardly that. It was like, and that's where we got canceled, cut off. But and people go, and it turns into the bane of people debating whether or not Starfleet had female captains because of one line Janice Lester says about your world of starship captains doesn't admit women. And people took that for years, even though it was written in '69, as a throwback to there were no, and you didn't see a female captain on screen in the original series. You did in the movies.
Minus
Fun.
the cage. Wait,
Uh,
no, never mind. No, I'm
what?
no. I don't know what I'm talking about. Go ahead, please
Okay.
continue.
But between Hernandez and Enterprise, which was Earth Starfleet, but still a female captain, and then some of the retconning that's happened in years since. But there was an argument for a long time, or why that was, or how do you justify that line? And very early on, either I thought of this or I saw somebody and I adopted it. Janet Lester was a little unbalanced and unhinged in the fact that she was her that whole plot, and whether you have a psychological bone to pick with the accuracy of how it was depicted or not, but
I don't have a psychological bones to pick.
okay, I was trying to use a colorful metaphor and then you just go back to a bad pun. Okay, fine. But you know what I'm saying? My where I rest with that is that it was all about her. It was her. She wasn't speaking broadly when she said your world of starship captains doesn't admit women. She meant you, James T. Your world of captains doesn't admit women. Like I could never be an equal to you. But it's to me, it was always about her justifying his rejection of her. But then he didn't wind up with anybody. So she's in a big club. It's not about you, Janice. It's not about you. But that line and her attitude were very revealing about how stuck she was on him, just the same way what's his face was stuck on her. So this episode is about her not being able to. The whole motivation comes out of her not being able to get over him from years earlier,
But
and
Larry,
she's driven herself crazy with this, to the point where she's going to hijack their lives and completely alter their lives and trajectories and depend on some wacky alien science to get what she'd always wanted, and then it just drives her even more, even madder. But so ruminating is how many years did she fixate on this, and it bent her, it twisted her.
yeah, I was gonna say something serious, and then I thought of the Band-Aid jingle when you said "stuck on." I'm
Wow.
stuck on Band-Aid brand because Band-Aid stuck on me. And then I
Yes.
forgot the useful thing I was gonna say.
Oh no. Okay.
So yeah, great example, Larry. That's all I can say. I
We'll
don't
just
know.
try to patch over this and move on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Oh yeah.
We'll try to rip that off later and see if we can.
Yeah. So we got a great comment
I don't,
from
I mean, you could see this is where I got into. I'm like,
yeah.
okay, ruminating. Well, what about Kirk and Obsession in the Vampire Cloud? Well, to me, it's like, well, but that was, it's like he dealt with it and came. What if you were stuck on something, but it's not running your life? But when
Not
you have
ruining
to
your yeah.
revisit it, then it is. Like
Yeah,
to me,
yeah,
Obsession was about a thing that he'd put aside, and then when the subject came up or something similar to it came up, he revisited it all again.
yeah.
Right?
So the problem, gosh, comment section is so good. I just saw Scott's comment. Good tea, nice house. I love that. I love that.
Good tea, blank house.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I know. I know. I promise there's actual real house here.
You're
Uh,
in John Oliver's White Void studio.
I am
That's
still, and he's breaking out of that
yeah, yeah, yeah.
very soon.
When a little face comes up and starts talking to you on the side.
Hey, John. Hey,
Hey,
Ollie.
hey,
So Charlotte had a comment here that I think is right on. When I think about Stuck in the Past, I think of a lot of villains, many of whom I can't remember their names. Khan, O'Brien's former CEO, the Ferengi obsessed with getting revenge on Picard, Ducat, wishing they could all go back, being a father to Bajoran people. Yeah, so there's a few here. I want to kind of talking about the movies. I want to just jump into a few here.
were there
Um,
any examples in movies?
well, there's this guy, a very small bit, in a very less known Star Trek movie, but his name is Khan. So if you look at
Oh, the greats. Okay.
yeah, the thing about Khan is he he really seems to be of all the villains the one. I mean, not only is he really obsessed with revenge, but he is so stuck on what happened to him and thinking about Kirk and how he left him buried alive, buried alive.
Actually, I was going with I am stuck on James T. and James T's stuck on me, and I shall have him.
I saw it's good. It's good,
Okay.
Dr. Trek. I
Well,
like.
you started it with the
No, I
band.
know,
Yeah,
I know, and
yeah,
you picked
okay.
up right where I left off. I love
Okay.
it. So Khan, the thing about that's hard about this topic that we're doing is it's hard to see someone ruminating because so much of it happens inside. But
Mhm.
what's so lovely about our great villain here, Khan, is he so explains what his thinking has been and just how much he has been thinking about this over and over again, the things that Kirk has done to him.
Wait a
Um,
minute. I didn't send that. Are you out collecting your own images now? Is that what's?
I improvised. Eh,
The
uh,
student has exceeded the master. Okay, no,
and there's, of course, one of my favorites here. A wonderful example comes from these two men and this moment here. Um, Warrior to warrior, cock
from
block da bok da. Um,
you're impersonating someone impersonating a Klingon. That's just
yes,
okay.
yes.
Are you talking about it from the standpoint of Kirk stuck on Klingons? You
On the
Klingon bastard,
way,
you killed my son 3 times.
yes, yes, exactly. You killing them bastards, you killed my son, and also what we see here is kind of stuck in. This is less about ruminating, but it's stuck in the way things have been between the Klingons and the Federation. And then the last one is Rafa. What's his name?
Ruafo.
Ruafo. Yeah, I can't remember.
Ruafo.
Ruafo.
Yeah.
Not Raffio. I think I was
No,
about
not
to say.
Rafi. No.
No. Um, and with
Sona.
the Sona, they're so stuck on how first off the past conflict between the Sona and the Baku, but then also these ideas of aging and of beauty and of all of that sort of stuff. I think that theme could have been developed a little bit more, but I think there's a lot there to say about they keep thinking things need to be a certain way.
Well, see, I thought of this as I was going down, as I was trying to collect some images, because we had so
Yeah.
much consulting time on this episode. Um, even fewer lines of texting than usual.
No, that's true.
But that's the whole thing. That could be a whole concordance right there. I realized that I was thinking individuals and that societies, like what you just said, how many times have we had Star Trek plots where we had cultures and one of the cultures never couldn't let go of something.
Yes.
They couldn't either they had a lingering resentment to another culture and that was friction between them, but it was really more like your two kids in the back seat and one of them is the one that's always doing the provoking and the other one sits there and takes it, or they finally lash back and they're the one that gets yelled at when it's the other one that causes the problem. I mean, the whole thing about stuck in the past could be a cultural level as well, or a group. I didn't really go there, but it feels like a third of all Star Trek planetary plots or about cultures in conflict and they can't let something go. So
Yeah.
I totally
Yeah,
I didn't go down that
yeah. I
pathway,
mean,
but there's lots of them.
of these, Star Trek Insurrection, Undiscovered Country, and Wrath of Khan, I think Wrath of Khan is the best example of what we're kind of talking about. And that's similar to like Mariner keeps bringing back like Boimler and how he left without even saying goodbye and all that sort of, like she keeps bringing it up. She keeps
Middle of my
bringing
shift.
it up. Can't hit the target. Much like
Keep missing the target.
much like Khan keeps bringing up what happened to him, how Kirk left him buried alive. That's
Okay.
the closest evidence that we get that this is something that keeps playing in their head over and over again because they keep bringing it up.
And see, and you went to those again. This to me, this was a thing where we didn't really we defining the term. We said ruminating and stuck in the past. And to me, I think of Khan as like long time obsession, and I'm thinking of our term today as little short. Like it's the building block to get you there, but at the beginning. And I'm thinking of Khan as like, well, stuck in the past, gone to the extreme. He's obsessed. I mean, that's Ahab complex.
Yeah, and there was our last
Things
show.
start with spark. So that's why I didn't go there with mine, but I'll totally follow where you're going here.
Well, Larry, it has been a long road getting from there to here. It's been a long show. Okay.
Someone's had a week off, I can tell. Okay. Without exhausting 5 days in between. Okay.
So,
6, 7.
In our last episode, we talked about addiction, and
In
there's
our last episode. Okay.
previously on Life Support Live. Uh,
Previously on Life Support Live.
is that Janeway again? Is that your?
What? No, it was my bad. Majel. But okay,
Okay.
way back.
I was going for more of a Battlestar Galactica
Oh,
previously.
previously on Life Support Live.
All of this has happened before, Larry, and all of this will happen again.
It's giving me a headache. Okay.
We had a point. I had a point. So the last episode of Life Support Live, we talked about addiction, and there was a great question about separating obsessions versus addictions, and I think that question comes up here as well, especially since I evoked Khan. So obsessions is where you really can't. You have a very difficult time getting a thought out of your head, or it's hard for you to stop thinking about something. Ruminating is more thinking about like why this happened, why did this person do to me, why didn't I respond in a different way. Your thoughts keep going back to this thing, and trying to understand it, and you keep trying to think about it. That's more of what ruminating is. And I think we can kind of move forward here to TNG era, and this episode that we keep discussing, it keeps coming back up, and maybe it's
And
worth.
it's not even Tapestry,
It's not even Tapestry. It does
but
involve Picard, so it's
but it is the
close.
threads of his life.
It
Yes.
is, and they do come together and unravel in family. So this is the episode right after Best of Both Worlds Part
The
Two.
World's Part Two.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
the radical third episode of a trilogy that Rick
Oh
Berman didn't
yeah,
do at first.
yeah. That's Star Trek doing
Time to move on.
That's
Yeah.
an unintended trilogy number 2 of Star Trek after Star Trek 2, 3, and 4. This is a wonderful episode, and we see here that is it Robert?
Robert.
Yeah,
Robert. Robert. Yeah.
Robert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, Robert and Jean-Luc, and how
Brothers.
much
The Picard brothers fighting again. Yeah.
they just need a good roll around in the mud. But they both have been harboring a lot of I don't know if you want to say grudges or
Resentments.
resentment. That is probably a better word for it.
You're
And
welcome.
There's a yeah. Thank you, Dr. Trek. I concur. There's been a lot that they've been thinking about that has been unsaid, and they finally are able to have that conversation. And there is some.
It helped being away for 20 years. Even in a world of comm badges across stellar distances.
Has it been? Was it 20 years?
Oh, I don't know, something like that. He'd been, I forgot now what he says, how long it's been since he's been home, but yeah.
Was it the first time he met his nephew? It might have been.
Yeah. Now, see, I didn't go back and rewatch.
Larry,
But
why don't you rewatch
generic-
every episode we're going to talk about before we air?
all 12 of them, all 28 of them. Yeah, okay.
Oh, Zahir's bringing up some Hamilton. The Picard brothers looking for a vine at work. I like what you're doing there, Zahir. Okay, is there anything more we want to say about brothers?
Well, no, I mean just the fact of it's again, I go back to how we define this and what's the duration and what's the scale. Is it
Sure.
a small? Well, I mean it depends, but in this case, it was. Again, there are otherwise healthy people like Picard, and he's just had trauma,
Again.
and he wants to go home. It took a trauma of being kidnapped and assimilated by the Borg to go. Okay, finally, okay, I'll go home.
Okay,
I'll
and
go home.
well, and he's also at Earth in the last
Yeah,
week.
he's at Earth and it's handy. Yes. And they haven't invented Kelvin long distance transporters. Why do we even need starships? Don't get me going down that one. Okay. So it's a case of what's worse than this family thing. He didn't run away from it. It wasn't like his driving force, but it was helpful that he got into Starfleet and didn't have to deal with the whole family situation.
Yeah.
The dad and
Yeah.
brother that didn't get him and he was the outcast and all of that. he didn't want to be a vineyard farmer, so he'll make up for it later. Um, but it was helpful and it meshed with him. But it's like whatever pain point that is within him, like dealing with family and dealing with his childhood and being treated the way he was by his dad and his brother, the Borg was so much worse that it actually made that look like it could be maybe a place of peace, or maybe he felt his mortality coming so close to death or losing his independence. I'm just saying that however hard that was, whatever driving force that was away from an otherwise fairly well balanced person, the Borg was so much worse that it made that look like a relief point, maybe, or maybe he can, like find some peace if he goes there. And then he almost didn't, and then he did. Yeah, good roll in the mud. We'll do it every time. So anyway, I just hadn't thought of it until now that it was like it took an even greater pinpoint trauma to help him deal with or put that in perspective. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? It's like if there's a silver lining in being Locutus, it's that he went back and made up with his brother, which was good because his brother's going to die in 3 years. Spoilers. Yeah.
In a barnyard fire.
Barnyard. I thought an early draft had them dying in a barn. It was like so innocuously throwback. Like, how do people die in fires in the 24th century? But they do.
Time is the fire in which we burn. By the way, can you get me to Viridian 3? I got a few things I need to do. I got this
I've been away so
ribbon
long.
to catch.
It's the mind Viridian 3. Do you know the
way to Viridian 3?
Yeah,
I've been away so long, I nearly lost my way. You can jump into the Nexus from Viridian 3. The Nexus has a really nice log cabin where you'll meet your favorite captain. Ride on horseback over the stream as long as you want. And then you'll be in Christmas time. Do you know the way to...
So, stuck in the past.
Page 3.
So, dating, yes.
Yeah, okay, let's, you know what we're going to do? We're going to jump in the timeline big time. Let's talk about T'Pol. Let's talk about Trip. Let's talk about Archer. Of course, folks, we're talking about Star Trek Enterprise, and this is...
Wait, can I ask you one thing? Did you know I realized I sloughed off on combining photos for context.
Beetle snuff? I told you to get off of that. We had that whole intervention, Larry. That's why we talked about the addiction episode.
I'm sorry, Ollie. I was such a big Beatles fan that I couldn't help it.
Hey, well, you know what? You say hello and I say goodbye. See ya.
Don't even start that. Okay. No, you may have skipped over. You're like, who the hell is this? But before we got to T'Pol, I sent you a picture without context of John Torres on a view screen. John Torres, who was anybody? B'Elanna Torres's father.
Why do I not have this image? Keep talking. Let me check.
Okay. It's a guy on a view screen with kind of a scrub, kind of like a Dadmiral beard. Although he's not a Dadmiral. He's not Oded Fair. No, I was trying to look at all the series. Somebody mentioned Ducat in a list. I threw Ducat at you because of his obsession with, he's stuck in the past about the glory days on Bajor and how great they were. And when he had a psychotic break or whatever, when he had his meltdown breakdown, when they lost the station, and he was stuck in that when you saw him in Waltz before he escaped again, when he was going to be on trial for war crimes. But that's where that's where he was stuck, was in getting back, and I wasn't such a bad guy. There's that. But also I was looking at Voyager, and I hate to keep going back to the same characters, but maybe it's a different slant. But B'Elanna, part of her troubledness was definitely about, there's that one. Oh, that's the flashback. I was looking for that one. There's a modern picture of him later. But, she was with her mom, and she had mom issues too, but it was kind of like mom in the present issues, right? And Barge the Dead was about that. But her dad, who left the family, she didn't see him for years and years and years. Then she actually contacts him before they get home after they've got Project What's It going. And Pathfinder, yeah. And thank you, Mr. Barkley. and she has a reconciliation with him, but it's really painful and hurtful, and he gets to finally say some things to her and all that. But it's like she put it behind her because she had to, but she had such this the whole string of troubling things that she just kind of stuffed and went to, and having a quasi healthy relationship with Tom, I think, is what, and he's standing there with her when she talks to her dad. And that's a moment that gets overlooked in the big rush of things. That was a part of author, which was otherwise about the doctor's book publishing thing. It was like the B plot. But going back to this thing about stuck in the past, a lot of people, sometimes you say that and it's like your whole, people can't move on and their whole life is stymied. But most of the time, I think it's like Jean-Luc and his family. Some things we can stuff them to be otherwise fine, but if you pull out that one issue at any one given time, it may not be stymieing our life and our progress, but it might be to some degree coloring our actions, and we may not even be aware of it. But it's not like it's taken over our life. Very few people, go crazy like Ducat with it, but with the help of something else as a trigger. But feels like we all carry around little unresolved things that maybe in a healthy way we've sucked them aside. But if we go there again, if something causes us to revisit it, we're still stuck. It's not resolved. Maybe another definition of stuck in the past is something that never had resolution, and you're stuck with being stuck there.
Yeah.
And for your own health as a balanced person, even though it may be very painful, you say I have to move on. I'm not a prisoner to it, but that doesn't mean that you can't be stuck there if you drag it out in the light of day and look at it again. It wasn't solved.
I had a family therapist supervisor of mine many years ago.
That's just the left person talking. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
On this week's episode, I think you know more than I do about what you're talking about. I had a supervisor of mine, a family therapist supervisor, once said, families are in a constant state of change. They're changing every day. And when there's problems is usually when there's a refusal to deal with change. And I think B'Elanna is a great example of that, where she's dealt with a lot, and she's a really complex character when it comes to her identity and her family. And there's a lot of stuff that she keeps bringing up, especially related to her parents and her heritage. And I think she's a real fantastic character. We should do a deeper dive. These family episodes like Family from TNG with Picard, or many of the stories we've talked about with B'Elanna, going from her parents to then her daughter. There's such great material there for us to dive into.
We're doing themes on the live shows now, but one thing that was part of, the very first episode we did that was going to be the cancel panel, the famous cancel panel, was character based, not theme based.
Yeah.
So we've got
based.
We've done 3 or 4 of those. We kind of got away from them, but I bet you if we really scraped the barrel, we'd probably come up with 3 or 4 more across all of Star Trek, or maybe 30 or 40. Okay, maybe more than that. But I mean, that's a whole rich, just looking at a character and seeing the things that, the themes that interact with them across we've done Worf, right? And Picard. And
we did Worf, Picard.
We're doing the Hall of Fame for Star Trek characters with issues. But there's a lot more on that ladder we can climb to.
Well, including Janeway, I think we were going to talk. Was it the episode Night or Void? I always confuse those two, Larry, on Live Sport Live. Which one is the one?
It's Night.
Night.
Yes.
That's the one where Janeway is really experiencing some symptoms of depression and really thinking about ruminating on the decision.
I almost dragged that one out, but we've talked about it.
You did in our very extensive, it wasn't extensive, text prep for this week's episode. She's really thinking about the decision to keep Voyager in the Delta Quadrant and really stuck on that. And it's not until she's able to talk to Chakotay about it that she is able to kind of
she's so depressed she's forgotten how to find her key light, and she stays in the shadow. And any actor / captain knows how to find their key light. How can you deliver the big inspiring speech at the end if you don't find your key line?
They are so perfectly lit in that era of Star Trek production. Always have the hair light. It's such a perfect 3 light setup for everyone. It's like you look back at a
Yeah.
lot of 90s television, it's like everyone has a hair light everywhere. They're always perfectly lit. Um,
And then you go to DS9 where nobody, it's a grate. And then you have to stand under a grating, so you have the light effect.
bum bum bum
There.
bum.
There. This is my impersonation of a DS9
Bum
set.
bum 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 bum.
You shall rue the day, Commander. Okay.
Bum bum. Whoosh. Ba 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 ba.
Wake me
Speaking
up
of
when the
DS9.
credits are over. Okay, sorry.
Speaking of DS9.
Okay, well, you pulled it out after all. Yeah, that's the Ducat waltz bit.
One of the
Yeah.
greatest episodes to feature these two wonderful actors doing what they do best is Waltz, and oh my gosh, Ducat! Wow, you want to do a deep dive into someone's psyche?
Uh,
Ooh,
Not that one.
not that one.
Ew, ew.
Yay, Dick Tricky.
It's, what are you trying to bring back Max Sennett all at once here? Okay. Talk about Keystone Cops. Wow. Okay. We have sound. You don't have to do everything as a silent movie. It's funny. Okay.
There's a lot of things we could talk about with Ducat, but he really wants that validation from Benjamin Sisko that what he did was in the best interest of the Bajorans. Um, and this whole episode, he is stuck trying to get that. He's been thinking about this, like, what I did was in their best interest.
What I did for love.
What I did
for love.
for genocide of the Bajorans.
Yeah. What I did for subjugation.
I mean, this episode is really, wonderfully acted and really terrifying when you think of the consequences of it. But you really see Ducat stuck in this loop, trying to incapable of really getting out of it. It's a great example, Larry, and we could argue that this image has Sisko here too. There's been periods of time where Sisko has definitely been ruminating. When we first see him in Emissary,
Right. Well, all about losing. I can say Felicia because that's the actress. Jennifer.
yeah,
It takes him a couple years there, and he lashes out at Picard over it. And when he comes,
yeah. Robert says, "Who would pay money to see Ducat on Ollie's couch? Does Ollie have a couch?" Robert, couch arrives on Tuesday. Oh man.
Okay.
Yeah.
We fire. I know. We fire a psychiatrist's couch right into the heart of the Nexus, and we talk to death. No couch. No couch. No. Photon or quantum couch. No. Arrived Tuesday.
Oh my god.
Dun,
Oh my
dun,
god.
dun, dun.
Enterprise. Larry, I wanted to talk about Enterprise
Yes,
here.
back to Enterprise.
Back to Enterprise. Boy, it's been a long show getting to this point in time. This is Anir?
Two.
This episode?
Yes. Or the Anar.
The Anar.
But yeah, it's where Trip decides it's too painful to be around T'Pol, and he's going to go over to the Columbia.
Yeah.
And resigns his position. That's his resignation pad there, in a painful moment. And then he comes back later on when yes.
Yeah.
Prof reference. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was looking at some of these series. This topic, to put this on a viewer, and not to go to the extremes of like Khan's obsession, but to pull back to things where otherwise functional people were stuck on something that they really had to painfully put away and go on with life and move on. Even though it's stuck in the past, it's like you can be stuck in the past and not. If you are stuck in the past, then you're Ducat or you're con. But if you're stuck in the past in one thing and otherwise can move on, that's what I was trying to find. Like functional stuckosity, I guess, or something. I don't know.
Functional stuckosity.
But this is one that I was like, oh my God, where in Enterprise does anybody have? And then I went, oh, okay, maybe I guess
I like this episode. I like this, not this episode.
Yeah.
I like this example a lot. Maybe I like the episode. I
Well,
forgot.
you're
It's
welcome.
been a while. Thank you. You're welcome. I'm crossing the streams.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. And that's really crossing the streams.
We've
Weird
yapped the whole night through. We've talked about Star Trek, and now it's morning. Good morning.
Yes.
Um,
I'm impressed. You do enough to do the other. Yay. Okay.
I love that movie. I
Oh, okay.
love Singing in the Rain. It is such a fantastic view on a pivotal point in Hollywood's history.
Mm-hmm.
What were we talking about? Enterprise.
Enterprise and not Connor and Trip.
Yeah. What I like about this example, Larry, is it's. I don't want to say it's about a breakup, but it is about a relationship, a romantic / not romantic / professional relationship, and rumination can often happen. Related to breakups or changes in a relationship, or like, why did that person do this to me? Why did they break up with me? Why didn't this work out? What
Right.
should I have done?
Why
What
was
would
I
happen?
fired?
Yeah. Rumination, in these points of like unwanted relational change, we can get stuck thinking about them over and over again. And
Or acts of God, like, oh my God, if I'd gotten on that plane, I would be, or I didn't,
sure.
or I didn't do this.
Right.
Sometimes it's like, what happened? Sometimes it's like, oh my God, this almost happened.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Survivor's guilt. I don't know.
Yeah. So it's a good example. And Dan says trip after the Zindi attack and the death of his sister is another example.
I thought
of
that was my runner-up.
Yeah.
I went there first, but I couldn't figure out a way to encapsulate it. So
Poor
yeah.
Trip has a kind of a sad arc in this series.
And I'm so bad about actors versus characters. Reed is the one that's the oddball, and we don't really get into him a lot. But Connor's the one that's Trip is the one that's going to be a captain, and we see in the future, and have a building named after him at Starfleet Academy and all that. And he's the one that's got the raw edges here going on between Elizabeth and T'Pol, and then losing his daughter, the clone daughter, later. But anyway.
There's a few other examples. Dan also mentioned Shinzon as a great example of that noble Picard blood flows through me. Shinzon is not an example we often bring up here. And I think there's a lot of good stuff in Nemesis, and Shinzon's motivations, how he was treated, what happened to him, how he was treated as a Reman, or not as a Reman, but like raised by
the hands of the Remans.
At the hands of the Remans force me to wear this absurd costume where I look like an reflective insect. Picard. So I secretly constructed this super powered ship that no one. How do they build these super powered ships? Like in Into Darkness too.
I know. I love the goofy super powered ship. Well, now the Packlets are doing the same thing on. On Lower Deck. I love how, and they're so great. I just want to get all the 42,000 animators and artists from Lower Decks and just give them a hug. The Packlet ship is like all the glommed on things they've come. It's like the Borg. It's like they're Junkyard Borg.
Yeah, they're totally the Junkyard.
But they all wind up with these forms that look unified at the end, and the Packlet just look like
they don't. I love how they don't know how to use any of the equipment. They take the saw. They're like, we need to hit the saw on the door.
But the very core of the ship is that little triangular Packlet, the Mondor. The one time you saw Packlids, the time they were in Smerit and Snare, that little kind of triangular ship with the little nose, the little bucktooth nose at the front of the ship. If you look at the front of the big Packlid ships, they always have one of those like at the beginning, and then everything else was just kind of like tacked on. Look, we are big and menacing from the stuff we found. Yeah.
Can you imagine being in that writer's room for Lower Decks? Like, hey, let's think of the most ridiculous alien that just like barely is in an episode, and let's build a whole theme around them.
What will be the big bad alien of Lower Decks? Packlids.
Yeah,
totally. No, it was so genius. Yeah.
And I also want to highlight. I think Jesse was the first to bring up Cybok. As a character who is doing the kind of the opposite here, like really helping people to overcome these things that they're stuck on, that they don't want to confront, like Bones or Spock at his childbirth. What was Bones?
I think I went on a rant about how I wish they'd talked about McCoy and his divorce, not about his dad, but they did what they did and whatever.
It left me with my bones. What was his
the fake universe? Okay.
Kelvin timeline. It's real. It
yes, but
exists. I can see it. Larry, what was Bones's thing that he was stuck on in Final Frontier?
His dad's. He couldn't save his father. They found a cure a few years later or something. He couldn't save his dad.
Yeah, no. I think whether those are more traumas or whether they're things that they're ruminating on is probably a little bit of both. I think that's a good example. So thank you for that, Jesse, for bringing up Cybok. Bring back Cybok. Maybe we can see him in
that's a whole hashtag campaign. Yeah,
bring back Cybok. Let's see him in Strange New Worlds. Like, let's visit Cybok doing some cool stuff. That could be a great standalone episode.
Does Lawrence Luckenbill have a son that's an actor?
That'd be pretty cool. Okay, Larry. Should we open up the? I can do.
Wait, didn't I send you one more from Picard?
One more from Picard. Another image, another example. Here we are.
Does that fit? See, because I saw overlapping topics here. Like we talk about obsession and we talk about.
Oh, of course this fits. I thought you meant does the image fit? I'm like, well, Larry, I can move it. I can move the image.
I'll stretch it. No, he's stuck on that moment, and maybe he doesn't. Does rumination mean that you physically contemplate something you're stuck on all the time, or are you stuck on the point where maybe you don't physically viscerally think about it all the time? It's clearly affecting what you've done with your life.
I mean, it can be you're intentionally thinking about it.
Unconsciously.
It can be that you feel out of control and you can't stop thinking about it. But it's often you're thinking about it to the point of trying to understand what happened or why you did what you did.
Right.
You're trying to get to some deeper understanding, whether by choice or feels like by force, and you never really kind of get there. And Rios in this moment, I think this is a good example, Larry. I think
he's so consumed by it that he reads hardback books instead of pad books. So that's how affected he is. Yes.
And Dan keeps bringing up these examples that of things that we often don't talk about, like Shinzon and Nemesis, which also makes me think of Nero. Nero is another great example. I don't have an image of Nero. Spock. That's my impression of Nero.
Oh, you mean the Romulan guy from STO9? Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, why are you talking about Roman emperors all of a sudden? He had a lot of problems. Okay.
Yeah, but he again we have a trauma, and again we have rumination, and he keeps thinking about the destruction of Romulus, and he keeps thinking about Spock. And similar motivations as Khan, a strong desire to get revenge and also create a brand new timeline. So there's that.
Oh,
All right, Larry. I think we can open up the counselor's log here, and you know what I can do for us? I can do a little bit of a deeper dive into
what
some
can
of
you
the.
do for me? Come on, what can you do me for here?
What I could do over here is
That's my
just.
Siggy voice. Yeah, but still, my collection's still bigger than yours. Okay.
Yeah, let's see here,
Yeah.
wise guy. Tell me a little bit more about that psychology and mental health, hey? Tell me about that psychological science, hey?
Wow. Okay. I'm just gonna sit here and watch. Okay.
So, here's the thing about rumination. As we were kind of talking about before, this is oftentimes a normal process. When we,
It's a perfectly normal situation.
Um, it's something that that happens normally when important stuff might have happened, when there might be some type of big setback. It's especially when rumination comes along with depression. So much of depression we think we evolve to experience to deal with things that aren't going the way we want them to. Depression, in a small amount, can have the effect of stopping you in your tracks and kind of forcing you to think about and understand something that isn't going the way you want it to, so that you can make some choices, some positive changes in your life to take things in a different direction. Rumination is one part of that process. But when we get stuck in it, when it feels like it's out of control, or when it feels like it's causing us pain or distress, or it might be very scary, that is more of when it becomes a problem. There's a term related to this type of thinking called the cognitive attentional syndrome. And it's both related to rumination and worry. I like to think of it as frozen bad stuff thinking. When you're stuck in this kind of mode of thinking about stuff over and
Oh,
over again.
FBST. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, why do some people experience it? Maybe it's because of you experience anxiety or sadness more than other people. We know temperament is genetically inherited, and it's like where the volume is set on your emotions. Some people might experience more sadness than others. Maybe it's because you have gone through traumatic events. We know trauma supercharges emotions. Maybe it's because of other circumstances in your life. But what tends to happen is people develop these very powerful beliefs about their thoughts, that my thoughts are uncontrollable, that thinking about things over and over again, maybe it helps me. Maybe they develop. Yeah, go for it, Larry.
No, I'm just my thoughts to your thoughts.
Oh.
Go ahead. No, yeah.
Yeah, we might, because we might get stuck in this, we might believe that we can't control this stuff, or that our thoughts are going to harm us. Or if we keep thinking about it, maybe it'll solve my problems. Maybe it will help me. The reality here is the harsh truth about your thoughts is, Larry, you can't control them. There is no control to the thoughts that pop up in your head. Your thoughts are kind of the background noise of your mind. Sometimes they're on point, sometimes they're helpful. Some thoughts come and go. Some thoughts are recycled over and over again, and they're very hard to ignore. The thing that we can control is our attention and what we are attending to and how we focus it. And that's the problem with rumination, is people get stuck in these patterns where their attention keeps going back to this thing. I'm going to talk in the away mission about what we can do about that.
Mm.
But before we get to that, we're going to interrupt this mental health segment with a K3 factor.
Oh, the K3. Hey everybody. Yeah, I'm way behind in the chat. I've been trying to catch up if I didn't give it away. But I was hanging on every word you said. Part of what you were just saying is what I was is the technical way of saying what I was saying about things you had that happen, how you do move on. Like you do
Mhm.
have to put it in the box and put it on the shelf, but it's still there and it may be unresolved. It's just not dragging you down. It's not adversely, but it doesn't mean it's been resolved. And at any point you can go and pull it out but as a tactic for dealing with it and dealing with life, you put it away. But um it was really funny because it was almost like I was trying to think on the behind the scenes side, which is what K3 Factor is for everybody who's new to life support right now. It's kind of the behind the scenes equivalent in real life. What I do, deep dive Star Trek and look at background and canon items to what we're talking about here, and Ali brings from the real world. And looking at this thing about being stuck in the past, and sometimes it occurred to me that sometimes stuck implies it's a negative, like it's a lack of progress, right? You're tractored into one place, you're tractor beamed into one place and can't get free or grapple. You're grappling literally with 2150's technology. And but sometimes maybe that can be a motivation for good if you can figure out what happened, or at least your perception of an occurrence, rather than being stuck in it, you can turn that around after a while. And maybe at times it feels like the stuckness is a negative, but then it definitely alters your life path. And where I'm going with this is on the behind the scenes side is I just went to the top, and it was Gene Roddenberry Day. And
Mhm.
I'm just thinking, if you were the guy that shepherded, you've got a picture there with Gene sharing the frame with somebody else. So there's Harv Bennett. If you're Gene Roddenberry, who very humanly are trying to make a go as a writer producer, you've had some acclaim, you're trying to build your career, and you're stumbling, except for this one thing that was technically a failure, except it was really big and it's affecting people, and it kind of creates a whole new paradigm where nobody who was associated with the failed show is in control of it really or making any money off of it, but somehow it's become the biggest thing in the universe. And then it's time for that to come back, and you've leveraged yourself into being the guru of that movement, like he did in the 70s with Star Trek. His Star Trek fandom exploded, and it was looked at as a moneymaker for Paramount, especially after Star Wars. And Gene gets to do the motion picture, and then that fails. And he goes back
Mhm.
to the TV days. I mean, not fails, but it's seen as a slight, and he's basically demoted and fired. He's contractually still executive consultant, which to most people would mean I'm going to quietly go away and take my 5% or whatever
Right.
and go away.
Right.
And Gene can't do that because, unlike anybody else in that situation, he's talked to conventions and college tours and all that, and he's made himself the guru of Star Trek for better or for worse, and maybe for the better. But in the real world of Hollywood, we got to have a power structure to get something done. They've handed the Paramount's handed the reins to Harv Bennett, who was just in that picture,
Yeah.
and that's a success story, starting with Wrath of Khan, until Harv Bennett runs afoul of the system, and he feels like he has to pull a Roddenberry and lay down a gauntlet. The line must be drawn here, no father. And
Ha!
or sorry, we're not gonna we no, we don't care about your rescue plan for the Romulans. You're out of here. So like many good real life and fictional people in Star Trek, people lay down the gauntlet and then they get called on it. They call their bluff and they leave. And in this case, Gene wasn't really fired, but he was really demoted. He lost his perch. How do you come back after 10 years of saying you are Star Trek and now other people beside you are making Star Trek? And he had to find that, he had to find that place to be, that existence, that role. Like a lot of us wind up with a certain amount of success in one thing, and then something happens. The politics change, or the boss changes, or something happens where it's a really big shift in our life, and maybe even the way we see ourselves in life, and we have to find a new place. And Gene was in that place. And then lo and behold, things came back around to needing to do a TV show, and he had leveraged himself into being the fandom power meant that he had to be part of it, even though contractually he didn't have that much. He had the clout, if not the paperwork that's filed in legal. So the follow up there is he goes from being this guy looking for how to salvage his reputation to because he's stuck on what was done to him, stuck on things even going back to the original series, he's stuck on the way the suits and the network treated them, and everything was so commercial and ratings driven, and they couldn't see the future power and popularity of the show, the way it was measured at the time, and all of that, and all the pressures you had to put up with, the censorship and the pressure. So all of that ruminating, where do I go? How do I reinvent myself and my image when he gets a second chance, which is rare, and he does his deal for the next generation? He's really on top of the world. And then his health, his mini strokes and probably his body abuse with alcoholism and even a little drug use in the 60s because it was the trendy thing to do for creatives. But that's his downfall. But for 3 or 4 years there, he signed his new deal. He was like king of Star Trek licensing, and he had the power in a syndicated show. He got to say, "I'm the final say here," which they walked around that a little bit a few years later when his health was going down. But I'm just saying, Gene, above all, was stuck on a lot of things from the past, like what was done to him, the fact that he lost control.
Right.
And so the third KC and the Sunshine Band, 3, we don't even have a photo of this guy, but so the infamous Leonard Majlish, and this is the way they depicted him in the Chaos on the Bridge documentary. So he could totally be the good cop. Leonard became Gene's bad cop. And Leonard Majlish, his attorney, his whole life, but especially the last few years, his whole role was in keeping Gene's power and making up for those things he had ruminated about, the things he had been stuck on. And some of them rightly or wrongly, and some of it's just the way things go. And so for the betterment, yay, Gene got independence, the syndication deal for Next Generation allowed it to flourish even when it had a rough time out of the gate. But part of the reason it had a rough time out of the gate was because his agent, his manager, his attorney, but acting on his behalf, rather than protecting Gene's status, made things a shit show for everybody else who was trying to do a good job on the show. The chaos on the bridge about disrupting the writer's room primarily, and zealously guarding Gene's legacy by running around and driving everybody else crazy and keeping them in chaos, he really jeopardized the show. So to me, it was what I'm getting at here, the topic of ruminations, was the things Gene was stuck on that became the marching orders, to resolve them. Some of them served the show well, some of them did not. Does that make sense? And so it's like our reaction to the things sometimes can propel us forward. Sometimes it drags us into bad choices, even when we think we've figured out what happened and we're gonna solve it the next time. Was that helpful?
Sorry, I was muted.
No,
Yeah,
I heard the whole time.
you
Okay.
heard me. The show did
Oh,
not.
nobody else did. Okay.
I yeah, I think the way you frame things in terms of the larger course of Gene's story, because looking at it in retrospect, it's easy to see, like, well, look at all these movies were made, and then we had TNG, and then we had the TNG movies. Like it seems so linear, and it seems like such a success. But when you look at the experience from Gene's perspective, and you just
The driving force was he was terrified about losing control
yeah,
again.
yeah, I that makes a lot of sense. The change from motion picture to Wrath of Khan, and then even in TNG to see some of the changes, and I know he had his declining health as well. Yeah, it just kind of makes me, I never, I got into Star Trek with Star Trek 6 when that came out, and at that point, Gene had passed away. So I never had the chance to meet him, see him speak, anything like that. But I wish he had a chance to see what, what became of all of this, and how much it grew. Larry, he knew before he died that DS9 was in the works, right? And so he knew, kind
Yeah.
of, yeah. Well, maybe there was some solace in that this franchise continues to grow and expand and continue to boldly go. Yeah, I think that's I like how you brought these different things together.
Well, and it fits what we're talking about here. And
Totally.
for one thing, it's like we say stuck in the past rumination, but that can play out in many ways and scales.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even for the good sometimes, if not for the, personally, and then our ripple effects on others. And that's a case of the ripple effect of his ruminating and being stuck in the past for the good sometimes and also for the bad. That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's a good segue here to the away mission that I want to give folks
Well,
about.
it's the only segue we have, so go for it.
What do we do with these situations and these times where we are kind of stuck in our thinking process? Um, so what I was just mentioning before is we can't control our thoughts. We can control how we respond to them, and we do have some control over our attention. Although some people struggle with that more than others, especially if you experience something like ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity. But in general, you can't control
Mhm.
your thoughts. You can control how you respond to them, though. That's kind of the only thing we do have to control. And again, people have very powerful beliefs around their thoughts that um, I need to think about this stuff, or if I keep thinking about this stuff, something bad will happen to me.
Mhm.
Um, if I can just understand this more, maybe I'll get to the bottom of what happened, which I like to remind people. You can't think your way out of worries. Similarly, you can't think your way out of rumination. That's not how it works. Kirk's never going to get the answer to why this happened to his son. Picard's never really going to get the answer about these things from his past. B'Elanna, same. Um, so if you find yourself, I want to give something very usable for folks. Um, if you find yourself stuck in these patterns, one of the best things where you keep churning at this stuff, one of the best, I've mentioned a lot of stuff over time. I've talked about how you can journal rapidly to get unstuck and to kind of process some of this stuff. I want to give something very different than I've given in the past, which can be helpful in stopping these cycles of rumination. There's a lot of benefit, Larry,
Mhm.
to reducing the time you're ruminating,
Mhm.
because the more it happens, the greater the disruption can be, the
Well,
worse you feel, the harder it can feel to
I-
stop. Yeah, time, they say, is the fire in which we ruminate. And so, so one of the best things to do is to break these cycles when they're starting. And so what really tends to help is doing something that really captures your attention. I know we often talk about how Star Trek can help us cope and watch Star Trek. Here, I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Doing something that isn't on autopilot, something that requires effort and focus. Best if it requires your attention and maybe your visual or hearing or some type of sense. So there is research that's been done that when people are exposed to some type of traumatic event and you have them play Tetris for about 10 minutes, um, it can really bring down some of that focus on that trauma and the rumination of the trauma and the impact that trauma has. And the reason is it's disrupting your attention. You're doing something that requires a lot of focus. It requires a lot of thinking. It requires a lot of visuals. So we all need activities like that. You need to find your Tetris, and maybe it is Tetris, but things that require effort. They're not on autopilot, which is why sometimes TV is not a good one to use in this situation, because you need to have to you need to require effort to do something. It could be a video game. It could be cooking. It could be trying to repair something. Me this morning trying to repair my coffee grinder was
oh,
definitely something that broke my thought process, because I didn't know what I was doing. I had to focus. There's a lot of things I had to learn. for that hour, my thoughts were completely on this stupid coffee grinder. Um, but
This explains much. Okay.
yeah, right. Uh, um, really absorbing activities that capture your attention, require your focus. Engage in those activities whenever you find yourself getting stuck in these rumination
Mm.
cycles. It's not avoiding your thoughts. Some people might say, aren't I just avoiding my problems? No, this problem is in too much focus on your thoughts. So we need to take. I think about Lord of the Rings, and you got Sauron, right? The evil dude, and that
Mm.
eye of Sauron. It's always like looking around. It's like that eye of Sauron. It's
That's
focused
the
all
Muppet
it.
version of this
Yeah,
Iris.
yeah. This is the Muppet. So
Everybody's ready to do a Muppet version of yeah. Okay.
when you're ruminating, your attention focus is all here on your thoughts over and over. You have to give like that eye something else to kind of focus on. So that's the away mission, folks. It can be knitting. It can be making Star Trek models. It can be cooking. It can be maybe cleaning. It can be so many different things. But you gotta. It could be Tetris. Find what works for you.
Oh, excuse me.
Beyond.
That was not an editorial comment at all. No, that was good
That's
stuff.
what we call bad timing. Hailing frequencies
Have you
open,
done the away
folks.
mission?
Huh?
Have you done the away mission?
That was the away mission.
Okay, you could. I didn't remember seeing the graphic. I really you
Oh,
combined.
oh, did I do the graphic? I think I did.
Okay, there
Did
we.
I
Okay,
not?
maybe I. Okay,
I don't know. I don't
fine.
know,
It's
Larry.
good. Yeah, let's get to comments.
Okay, let's
Uh,
page 4. Let's get to comments here. There's one I saved from Jesse a while ago. Has there been
I've been
any chatter about Lower Decks merchandise? I've missed the days of collecting Playmates action figures. Playmates are coming back. They're making new action figures, right, Larry?
Yes, they are. I'm going to say I don't know about Lower Decks Playmates, but I do know if you want to celebrate Lower Decks, and I'm not trying to plug them, but I love the guys. I mentioned them earlier. But Fansets has got Lower Decks character pins.
Yeah, and they have the Lower Decks
Yes.
Starfleet badge
Yeah.
as well.
In fact, they're really good, and they have supplied me over the years with a batch of pins that I can use for like little prizes when I'm at cons and things, and I promote them. But I went over to get some, and I was like thinking badges and ships and characters, and I anyway, we're all kind of brain dead. And I said, oh, and some Lower Decks badges, because cosplay. I'll say one thing real quick, a throwback here. In the 2 panels that I had like 150, 200 people at on the Roddenberry stage, which was the seating and then the little bar rounds beyond that, which kind of turned into a balcony. It's like I'm looking at the audience, and then we have a question, and I'm like, it's kind of like when you look up at the balcony and you see somebody up there. It was like, oh, back there in the dark where the the little bar rounds are, there are still people watching from back there. But um, oh, I got off track here. What were we just saying?
Playmates, toys,
Teenage Toy.
merchandise,
Yeah,
Lower
yeah, yeah,
Decks.
yeah. Lower Decks. I did my poll. It was very we when the attendance went to half. It's like we retrenched back to original series and next gen fans. 2/3 of the audience, that was their favorite. That's what they came in with. And so, but on one hand, you'd think, well, we lost a lot of youth, and we didn't really. There were still some people there for that. But what's funny is everybody, no matter where they came from, except one guy who spoke up about it, but of people I directly sampled, so it's kind of anecdotal, but kind of 2 or 3 times it was the same thing. Everybody loves Lower Decks, and especially those who didn't know that they would or didn't think they would and all that. And one thing I forgot about Vegas was there were tons of people that it was their first time to come to Vegas. Lots of people came to the pandemic Vegas for the first time, because my comeback was always, you picked a hell of a year to come to your first Vegas trek. But that was but they were like long time. They weren't new fans so much as they were longtime fans who had just never gotten out of the armchair and gone to a con, and they did, which was something I forgot to mention up front. But the point of this was all about how when I talked to our Fansets friends, they totally sold out of Lower Decks magnet badges.
Oh,
Like,
nice. Yeah. Yeah.
so that was popular, but also another thing about how the dealers that were there, the pool was smaller, and the people that were there did really well, amazingly. But people love Lower Decks, and
Um,
you get Lower Decks pins from fan sets. End of rant. Okay.
Yeah, Heidi's got a great example here. I have used Sudoku to empty my head if the thought starts going into the evening. Sudoku, crossword puzzles, those are also good ones for folks. You got to find those activities that really consistently work for you and that you can easily go to. I love Sudoku as an example because you can have it on your phone, you can have it on a piece of paper, you can take it with you anywhere. And Zahira also says, what about work? Work captures attention and requires focus. Yeah, definitely if you can get into it.
And that's the whole bury myself in work to get
Yep.
away from.
Sometimes that's what people do. And then Zahir follows it up with badges and ships and Captain Riker's pips. Okay, I'll stop. Oh, I love it. I love it. Glinda also said it wasn't fanfic, but turning my evil ex into a zombie in a short story was most cathartic. I love that, Glinda. That taps into something we've talked about before about creating narrative out of difficult experiences seems to be very, very healing for folks. And that is also, I'm getting through a lot here, Larry. That gets to Nathaniel's comment about, I can't wait for Ollie's take on puppet therapy.
I saw that.
If it helps you create a narrative out of a difficult experience, I'm all for it. That's a lot of what trauma treatment is like.
Just don't let the case with Khan's pendant fall on your puppet therapy puppets. We don't want that.
And make sure the puppet is not a member of your crew.
True. Kayshawn, his puppet body smashed, crushed. Yeah.
And Charlotte said, speaking of Lower Decks merchandise, I want my Lower Decks Tom Paris collector's plate. Don't we all, Charlotte? Don't we all?
I don't have them to call up, but I was
Yeah,
making
please.
notes on some earlier. So Jesse
Yeah.
mentioned that while we were talking about Vegas, MegaCon happened in Orlando, which is a Comic-Con and cross franchises. That he was there, and apparently it was a success. And he was talking about what they did at Vegas, which was all the people signing had plexi booths. They had in fact, Tuesday night setting up, I saw my old friend Bob O'Reilly sitting there, and I walked up and I said, "I don't need an autograph, but can I make a deposit?" it's the way that felt. We were talking about testing. Linda said, who was at Vegas, said she saw somebody testing herself in the ladies' room, which I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know how that worked.
For COVID?
Jared mentioned that we are without Christoph and Cairo, our Austrians today, because they're having a Trek event. So that was cool.
Cool.
Phil Barnes, I saw your comment about the salmon mousse from Monty Python's Meaning of Life.
Is that where that's where
yeah.
that's from?
Scott said, yes, there you go. You had it in line. Scott mentioned there should be isn't there a Voyager episode called Ruminations? And I was like, there should be. Brandon had to check out the list of episode titles. There had to be.
That so sounds like a Voyager episode. Oh my gosh.
Episode title, anyway.
Yeah.
And then Jesse had a point. He said, what about gatekeepers? Would you say they are people who are stuck in the past? But I'm going to say that gatekeepers is also a little bit like about how rapists aren't about sex. They're about power. I'm going to say gatekeeping is about part of that, but also, yeah, there you had it.
Yeah, it's a good question, Jesse, and I would have people refer back to our episode on gatekeeping for a deeper dive into that. Thinking about this, I think it can be about a lot of things. It's similar to like people who are not getting the COVID-19 vaccine when they have access to it. It's about a lot of things. It can be about being gatekeeping can be about stuck in the past and like the way the stories were, the way the franchise was, their idea of what Star Trek is. But it can be about other things as well. Just like vaccine denial can sometimes be about misinformation. Sometimes it can be about might be about like your beliefs. It might be about suspicion. It's a lot. It can be a lot of different stuff. Speaking of Voyager episode Ruminations, Barbara had a great comment about Janeway and her ruminations. Janeway purchased her ticket to rumination from guilt and self-doubt. Night stops. We talked about Night. She stops doing her job and plans, and she's suicidal. Endgame smashes the temporal prime directive and steals stuff, and then dies on a suicide mission because of her guilt. There's, if you look at the larger arc of Janeway, she's really thinking about that decision.
The Arc of Janeway.
The Arc of Janeway.
Was this Barbara's first time Hi, Barbara, if it's your first
I
time. If
don't
you're
know, but we are happy to have you here, Barbara.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Robert says, so Dr. Ellie, as a child, did you ever just sit watching the washer go around and around? I did not, but I did look at the clouds go by. I did used to do that. So
That's
here
an
I had
old
a
song.
fun question. Who would play Boimler? You have
Boimer?
to say it like Boimler. If you have a spring, like you have a spring in your step.
Okay.
If you showed up in Star Trek Picard,
Well, and I saw the answer. It's what's his name? The actor. The actor has to play him. Jack. Something.
maybe,
And then someone
maybe.
else said he doesn't look like him, and I'm like, okay, his eyes. They drew. I was watching the live action panel the last time they had one recently,
Yeah,
and like they've gone for the eyes with. I mean, the eyes are
yeah,
exaggerated in that style, but
yeah.
they've captured the actors as essences in the animation. It's kind of uncanny a little bit.
Is it an uncanny valley? I don't think it's that uncanny.
It's not. I don't know.
I think it would be great to see the actor. Star Wars has done this a few times where they've taken animated characters and then put them into a movie or into a TV
Hmm.
series with Mandalorian, and in those cases they've recast the actors. But they've also done the opposite, where they had the voice actor who played Darth Maul come back to play him in real life in a scene
Hmm.
in the Han Solo movie. So I think there's borrowing from that franchise. They could recast him, or they could have the actual actor play. I think it'd be better to have the actual actor play. I think that would be a nice little
Well, it
touch.
depends. If considering that Boimler isn't exactly the kind of guy you think about having to stunt double big time. I think is it Jack Quaid? Is that his name? I think it is. I'm still getting everybody's names down, guys.
uh,
We got such a huge batch of names and people and characters and
Barbara
faces.
says it is her first time. So welcome, Barbara. And Dan
Yep.
says I introduced Barbara to Life Support Live. So thank you for that, Dan.
Oh,
Yay to the growing family of lifers here, our lovely community. We love you guys. She says, by a way of intro, I'm Captain Mac from Watch Trek. Here's where we can find us. Awesome. Yay, watch Trek. We do like watching Trek, so
hmm.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I fake it all the time, but fine. Most people, it's a great thing.
It's yes, it's a splendid thing.
I try not to ruminate over it. Yeah, about how I.
Yeah. Zahir also mentioned Cisco falling into rumination after Eddington.
Yeah.
I'm surprised we didn't bring up Eddington today. How did we not bring up Eddington?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's the Niner thing. This was, I'm very cautious about trying not to blow. I mean, I always, when we come up with an idea, I'm like, okay, now what are the guardrails around it? Because otherwise we could go on forever on some of these things. And
Yes.
I got constant, and I was looking at the regulars and going, okay, let's think about, we go back to some of the regulars over and over. I was trying to break out into some of the guest moments and different levels of success. But the chat, our lifers always come through, and so I wasn't too worried about it. But yeah, Eddington definitely, and it's his downfall at the end.
Yes.
I don't know. It's like the Maquis were a movement that were aggrieved. So
Real
how
quick
much of that
about
is
Eddington.
yeah.
Charlotte says, "Was Eddington ruminating? I always think of Cisco as a ruminator in that relationship, which is what I think Zahir was getting at. Absolutely, like Cisco was the one who was really kind of stuck in that. Cisco, two
You
of
don't
his
see any co-rumination going on.
co-rumination. Larry, I'm blanking on the name of Cisco's friend who defects to the Maquis.
Cal Hudson?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Cisco has lost two people close to him, one who's friends with, and one who served underneath him, to the Maquis. He's got through a lot. This guy, this captain of ours.
It's so funny that the Maquis were just invented as a reason to launch Voyager, and then they thought, well, let's kind of backroot them. Let's backseed them on the other two shows. And they get like one, maybe two, well, they get two shows on, they get a Deep Roots episode and then a direct reference on Next Gen. And DS9 runs off and does all these characters and arcs for something that was really just there to help launch Voyager.
Right. They're like, I really feel like we could get a really cool 8-episode run out of this.
I started to say something, but I'm going to save it for the day we have a tangent, and I'll use it for a K3. So
don't forget.
I'll zip my lip on that.
Write down and post it, and put it put it right there on your Life Support Live wall right there. Nathaniel brings up Garrick, always rewriting the past, always justifying. Garrick's another one of these Cardassian psyches that, like, you go in there and you're like, there's a lot there.
It's a never-ending sacrifice.
It's a never-ending sacrifice. The never-ending story.
Oh, okay. I don't remember the music.
After your time. After your time, I think,
guess.
Larry. Yeah.
I've never heard before your time. You hear all the time, but time. What is time?
It's the fire in which we burn. I actually think of it more as a companion.
It's the mud in which we. Whoops, sorry. It's the mud in which we wade, wobble.
Wobble. It's more appropriate for.
That's my thing. I wish I burned the time.
Oh man, Larry. Well. There's one more image I want to put up onto the screen over here, Larry. There's a lot of cool stuff happening at Trekland right now.
Oh yeah. Well, we were talking, and not to be all commercial. I'm more a thing of it's there. You guys know it's there. Yeah. But I love it when there's a sale. They had these sales, like TeePublic has sales twice a month. There's a 4-day sale and a 5-day sale, and they're every month. So if it feels like I'm always plugging this, I just want everybody to know when stuff is cheaper. Yeah. So that's the thing. And when you're there, if you've got something else, look around. It's site wide, so maybe something else floats your boat and catches your fancy too. So.
And Larry, my friend, what is happening this week on Trekland?
You mean besides me recovering?
Yes.
Well, if you didn't catch anything, I did a long blog post about Gene at LarryNemecek.com, and Trek Files this week was a third try at a show because tech kept killing us.
Oh, did you tech the tech? Did you try?
We tech the tech and we tech the tech with and without brackets, and
double teched.
Finally did something. Yeah, we got a little off tech, but we got back on tech. And then there's a Roddenberry podcast called Sci-Fi 5, which they don't promote as much as should be promoted. But it's 5 minutes of sci-fi history every day by the calendar.
Oh, cool.
And not always Trek, but it's anything. But of course, August 19th was a Gene topic, and it was really well. I was really proud of the way John Champion did it, and Jessica Verdi, who was the co-host of the morning show. If people saw the live stream from Vegas, she's the reader, but it's a totally different take, and it's a Gene Roddenberry story that even if you've heard it, not to this degree, and it's really compelling and dramatic, and I recommend it. But yeah, all the Gene stuff happening this week, and that's there. But coming up, anybody that's in the Salt Lake City area, I'm going to be there live in about 3 weeks.
Oh wow!
It's Salt Lake. Used to be Salt Lake Comic Con, but Salt Lake FanX. And I don't know how many of our family are there, but John and I just confirmed it's really going to happen. This little convention in Yuma, Arizona, the first weekend of October, I'm going to be at too. And you and I need to talk about future shows and what we are doing.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff happening, folks. Next week, I've got a conflict. My daughter has an event that we have to get to, so next week we are off. But we'll probably be back in 2 weeks, and we'll see if there's anything we can do in between. But between now and then, I am at Mattu on social media. You can catch my videos that make psychology fun and easy to understand at youtube.com/thepsychshow. I've got an episode actually on intrusive thoughts and how to deal with them that I need to publish. It's just ready to go. I just need to write up some stuff. It'll be out very soon.
Maybe you could deal with those intrusive thoughts if you would just publish the show.
Yeah, I know. Maybe I should go play Tetris for a little bit. And as Heidi said, don't forget to be awesome, folks. Until our next episode, live long and prosper, my friends.
Yep, everybody, truck well.